You are tuned to KFUG Crescent City 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. It is 8 minutes past the top of the hour. That hour is 12 noon on this Monday. Thanks to Just Paul for coming in and doing some quick triage on the board and the sound. We appreciate him rushing in on his lunch hour from all the other stuff that he is doing in the community to take care of that. And we also appreciate that our next guest has made it to the studio. First District County Supervisor Roger Gitlin. Supervisor Gitlin, thank you for joining us on Public Process today.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. Nice to be here.
Let me ask you to just get a little bit closer to that mic. Yep. so we can hear every scintillating word.
Yeah, you'll hear it all. I've been known to speak up a little bit too.
Well, I think that's something you and I have in common.
Yeah, we do.
So Supervisor Gitlin has joined us, and we're going to be talking about a number of different things, including an effort to get some action at the County Board of Supervisors on homelessness in this community. But when Justin Riggs was leaving us, Agricultural Commissioner, who we had in our first hour, there's another activity that's going on that involves the public, or at least some members of the public, related to things that are happening out of the Ag Commissioner's office.
Well, yeah, Mike, as a matter of fact, as you know, we have a program called Take a Bite Out of Blight.
We do.
And it involves little or no money, volunteer efforts to help clean up our community. So one night I was thinking, how can we expand it into other areas of community service? And we approached probation with an expansion of their community service hours program to see where they can be deployed. Just so you're aware, we've got inmates from Pelican Bay State Prison cleaning the median, which is you have to be a state employee to be out there, and they're doing that every 4 to 6 weeks. So there clearly is an option and a window for those who wish to come out and help and volunteer and provide a service. And in the case of the Department of Animal Regulation and Justin Riggs, we met some months ago, and I said, where do you have need? Other than, yes, we need more money, and that's hard to find. And he said, we need people to do things. We need volunteers out here to walk the dogs. We also need help in what is called the wood chip dispersal program. And what that is, Mike, is Justin has arranged to have soft wood chips delivered in big piles out where all the myriad of dog trails are on the property, which is beautiful, beautiful property. And he needs help in dispersing shovel, wheelbarrow, rakes, these wood chips along these trails. So we have done this several times with the Department of Probation, those needing to burn off community service hours, and it's been very successful. So last week when I was touring Juvenile Hall, Chief Probation Officer Lonnie Raymond was showing me, and I said, Lonnie, is there a possibility of getting the kids out of the containment area here, out in the community, and performing certain functions? And he thought that was a very good idea and an idea whose time has come. So our first project was last Friday, and we started a juveniles only program to disperse all the wood chips along the trails. It's a never-ending process because the trails get used.
Sure.
So and that was last Friday. We had, I believe, 10 minors involved with probation supervision, and they burned off community service hours. These are the kinds of things that we all can participate in, whether it's a beach cleanup or whether it's an issue where our departments who are beleaguered with lack of funds need help. And those of you who are listening out there who want to help, you can find us. Just give us a call. We're happy to put you in the right direction so your efforts can be realized by helping us save money, because otherwise we'd have to hire people to do these things. And then you have a greater sense of, I'm helping the community improve itself.
And let me say, I think giving, whether it's young people or adults, an opportunity to be able to do community service and get themselves out from under some potential financial debt or more jail time or whatever. I think that's a great thing. But here's the question I have, right? and I don't necessarily think it fully applies here as it does to some bigger areas. Because as you said, if we didn't have these people, we'd have to hire people. We have people in this community that need jobs.
So absolutely.
And so I guess one of the questions is, do we wind up sort of shortchanging people who might need gainful employment by using people who are being paid much less?
No,
Does that make sense what I'm asking?
No, I understand the point of view. There will always, and I say always in underline, there will always be need for volunteers to provide services to any place they live. It isn't just cleaning up litter. It's doing anything which is helpful. Now, think about it from a standpoint rather than a money standpoint. Think about the goodwill that's created by those who participate. We have a very large demographic audience of seniors in our community who are looking to help out where they can, rather than sitting in the senior center or in front of I Dream of Jeannie reruns for the 50th time. Let them get out into the community. Let them do things even for an hour or two or some portion thereof and provide services which are greatly needed. Now, in answer to your first question, do I think we need more private sector jobs? Absolutely. We used to have fishing. We all know this. We used to have a timber industry. It's virtually non-existent, and we won't. That'll take another program to go into the whys of why those two major industries no longer exist. But certainly we all live here, and we want to make our community a better place. It's called quality of life.
No, and
it's a two-way street,
well,
too.
And it is, absolutely, because I think that giving people an opportunity to participate in the betterment of their community to the best of their ability, doing things that they can and are willing to do, fosters a sense of inclusion and community pride and all of that, and can do important things like combating isolation, not just in elderly, but also other people who are shut in or feel marginalized or pushed to the side. So having those types of opportunities makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. I think that it has to be, as you said, a two-way street. It's not just you're doing for us. We're also in exchange doing for you, not necessarily monetarily.
You bring up to me a recent conference I attended down at the California State Association of Counties where they were talking about how some of the elderly in our community are suffering there. Suffering from loneliness. Their families are not here. And they, of course, wanted to supplant it with some kind of a program where someone comes around and talks to them and visits. And I said, why don't we, as community members, and I am going to tell you I have practiced this, why don't we adopt a senior and say once a month or once a week, we're going to take that individual to the doctor. We're going to take that person out to the market. We're going to spend some time talking about local issues, even if we disagree. We're putting an opportunity to put blood through their veins so they can feel productive, that someone cares about them. And I do have that. I have a couple of individuals who I assist at least once a month, and it makes me feel good, and it also helps them. So in creation of how do we get more jobs into this community which pay people a living wage, I don't know how it applies here, but certainly that needs to be addressed.
Well, and I think it's important because, I think this is one of the things that we would agree on, is that there is a certain dignity that comes with work, of doing something productive in your community. And in many cases, for some people, that's even more important than the money, is feeling like I'm doing something that is worthwhile, that makes my community a better place, and I feel better about myself.
There's a French phrase, it's called raison d'etre.
Yes.
You've heard that?
I have.
Reason to be.
Yes.
Now, we all get up in the morning, and what's our plan? For many people in this community, they have no plan. They have no understanding. Well, I don't know what I'll do today. I'll go for a walk, or I'll do this. I'm asking all of you out there in Radio Land on KFUG to make yourself available to help out for an hour or 2 hours a week. Do something. Pick up some trash. We have plenty of opportunities to do that. Help out at the dog pound, walking dogs, or if you feel so inclined, wood chip dispersal, or any myriad of different activities that are available. We're asking you out there to, if you've got the time, to give us some of your time, and that will make you feel better.
We're speaking with Del Norte County Supervisor Roger Gitlin. My name is Mike Thornton. This is Public Process, and you are tuned to KFUG Crescent City. So I want to ask you this, Roger, and I don't want to get into this, like where it feels like we're like, in opposition all the time. We're in opposition enough, But so here's my question, and I mean this seriously. I think that all of this volunteer stuff is great. For all the reasons that you have said. And at the same time, one of the things that I see repeatedly in this community, and it's not just this community, it's many communities, that, if you're here, those seniors that you're interacting with, then they have you. But what happens when you're not here? Or the kids in school, they have the one great teacher, or the janitor, or the certified person, and as long as they're connected to that person, they're having a really great experience. And I guess what I'm getting at is that one of the problems, as it seems to me, is that so many things are personality dependent. They're not systematized. There's nothing built into the structure to make sure that when you retire, what you were doing continues. Or if somebody quits and leaves their job, that all the good stuff that they were doing continues because it was all based on them and their individual effort. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, it actually does. And I think what you're referring to is how do you institutionalize what you do in the past so it perpetuates into the future.
And that everyone has an opportunity to access that.
Yeah, and leaving what I call, and jump in any time, Mike, if I'm incorrect in assessing, leaving some footprints in the sand, so to speak. Whatever it is you're doing, that they're continued. Now, I try to behave in a way, an interface with the public in a way that engenders people to say, I want to do what you're doing. I want to help. And we have no shortage of people who call us from all across the county and saying, I believe in what you're doing. Yes, indeed. I also get some calls that say, I don't believe in what you're doing. So that's part of just the life of politics. But I will tell you, I don't know how to do it any other way other than to be absolutely candid in how I approach a situation. Obviously, you and I have gone around and we've been disagreed on a number of issues, and that's fine. I actually welcome that because we all learn from each other's conversations as we have these conversations. And one of them has to do with what do we do with people who do not have shelter, or at least purport to say we do not have shelter. Now, contrary to popular belief, I do care about people who live in our bushes. After all, I'm in there cleaning up their mess in many cases as we go into an area behind the trees, which no one sees behind the trees. We see these horrific messes. And I'm very honored to organize, and we have scores of volunteers who believe in that. We want to keep this area clean and pristine. And that leads me into what do we do when people don't act socially responsible? What do we do? I'm all for, I understand people want to rest and sleep, and the Court of Appeals order demands that. I'm all for that. But what about the consequential behavior that goes beyond and above resting and sleeping? What public urination, for instance, public defecation. I know I'm going through my list, and then I'd like you to respond. What about disturbing the peace? What about someone who's out of control and is mentally ill? He can't control himself, and he's out in the street, and it intimidates a lot of people. I had a constituent call me. I don't want to give it out names, of course.
That's fine.
But she's an elderly lady, and was out on her front lawn, and she was watching someone who lived in an RV, and across the street, you can park in your RV in front. You don't have to go to Shoreline, and watching him publicly urinate. Now she's complaining to me. What can you do about this? Now, I've gone to the city. I've actually made my point clear, and I'm gesturing now. They give me the Mr. Gitlin, there's nothing we can do. It's the Court of Appeals. So that brings me to my next subject, which I want to address, is we need to find an alternate spot, a staging area, if you will. How do we help people who have these great needs at the same time not sacrificing our community?
Well, and we're going to land on the need for an alternative space, and we're going to agree on that part of it. So let me here are some of the issues that I have with some of the things that you have just said. Every antisocial behavior that you have listed, those things are already against the law. Public urination, public defecation, being aggressive with people, committing crime, those kinds of things. There are already laws against those things. That's different than criminalizing poverty and homelessness itself. And I guess one of the questions I have is I don't understand, intended or not, what comes off as the demonizing, the ostracizing, the marginalizing of these poor and homeless people and or mentally ill and or drug addicted, how that sets the stage for helping to come to a solution that will work. That's the part I don't understand. And like, I was talking with someone yesterday. I was hanging out over at the beach, and he was telling me that, that once again, I don't know. I'll ask you. That there's a significant problem between the space between the liquor store and the cemetery, from 9th Street to the cemetery.
Very familiar with it.
I don't hear much about that being discussed publicly. I was talking with several people about how in the very back of the swamps, there's hardcore criminality going on, drug manufacturing, prostitution, those kinds of things. I don't hear people talking about those. What I hear about incessantly is the handful of people who happen to be in public view at Beachfront Park. So if we care about all of these things, why are we not going after what sounds to me like much more serious problems as compared to focusing on this smaller group of people who just happen to be in this very public place?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. It's public. They're in view sight.
But is that we only care about it if they're in view sight?
No, not I. I'm very familiar with these areas, and I can name a few more for you if you'd like. Another community, a homeless encampment is propped up with lots of trash over on Old Mill Road and Northcrest. Any place you see trees behind the DMV, there's all kinds of activity. I can go on and tell you about these places, but they're behind the trees. I can tell you about the Walmart property and across the street from the Walmart property that your eyes would pop out of your head if you saw what was going on behind the trees. So it's not reached the public purview, but out in Beachfront Park, Battery Point, and the Howe Drive, all of a sudden, this is where most people enjoy. Our tourists come into there. Now it's in your face. And now I think there's the line. We all know these are not unique problems to one area. They're all over the county, if not all over the state.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to say this the way I mean it, right? Because we know these other areas exist, which tells us it's a huge problem. And it's a problem that's been going on for a very long time before the Ninth Circuit ruling. The Ninth Circuit ruling, as you have correctly pointed out, has brought some people out of hiding into the public view. And now, oh my gosh, it's a crisis, right? But it's been a crisis that's been going on for a long time. And while John Q. Public might not have been aware about it, people such as yourself, Other county supervisors, other elected officials, law enforcement, code enforcement, mental health, social services have all known about this for a long, long time. I think you and I agree that the answer has always been people need an alternative place to go. Because once there's an alternative place to go, then we can say, you know what, you can't be here. You can be there.
I agree.
Why doesn't that happen?
All right. Now,
why doesn't that happen?
First of all, you made reference to the fact that you've not drawn attention to any other areas but the public areas.
I don't know that I've said that.
Let me just interpret what I thought I heard you say in terms of what other areas have been dramatically impacted. I'll give you an example on South Beach, 101 South. Property owned by Department of Fish and Wildlife, behind the trees. All you had to do was walk back and you would see an 80-yard swath of filth and trash and drug needles, but you didn't see it as you're traversing up and down 101. Sure. Now, we knew about that. We sat down with Fish and Wildlife and we said, we can get some volunteers out there. Working with the Coastal Commission, we did that. And that area has become trash-free. Now, what they did is they started cutting back all the trees. Now you can all of a sudden look in. For reasons that are pretty obvious, nobody who behaves in this way, this antisocial or in fact illegal behavior, wants to do it in public view. So I say to you property owners, cut back your trees, maintain your property. And this will, it doesn't change the fact that these people still have to go someplace, but some of the collateral consequences, way beyond sleeping and resting, would be addressed. And as you mentioned, they are illegal, antisocial, illegal, but for resources, lack of resources, they're not addressed in any way other than volunteer efforts, folks like myself who go out there, roll up their sleeves and say, I need some help.
Well, and definitely addressing the garbage problem is incredibly important. I mean, because there's a whole slew of public health issues that are tied to that. Let me just remind the listeners that you are tuned to KFUG Crescent City. This is Public Process. I'm Mike Thornton. We're speaking with 1st District County Supervisor Roger Gitlin. Thanks to the supervisor for being with us, and thanks to you, those of you who are with us as well on your community radio station, KFUG. So here's my question. Do you believe that drug addiction is an illness?
As an illness as compared to a choice. I believe drug addiction is a choice people make to use drugs, and then unfortunately, as they use drugs, they become habit forming, and they can't break the habit. So ultimately, it is first a choice.
Okay, you do know that the American Medical Association classifies it as a disease, right?
Well, let me say, you asked me my opinion.
No, that's fine. Right. I'm just
I don't need anybody to say the AMA does this or this organization does that. I will tell you that we're not born unless we are heroin addicted through some kind of drug process from a pregnant mother. Generally speaking, we're all born free of these vices. Okay. Now, as you grow up and you see the experiences of life, people look for different ways, and then they start off using what they think, maybe smoking cigarettes, and then it steps up and maybe it's marijuana, and then you get to the higher levels, and then they are in fact victims of these vices. And I've said this before, and I believe that in the case of alcohol, you don't come out yearning a cutty sark. Your body doesn't crave that. But I believe that it is a choice ultimately, and that starts in the home.
So I guess here's my question, right? This is where I'm trying to get at, okay? And I don't want to get into this
because I'd like to talk about some of the things we're going to propose to our board of supervisors.
Absolutely, and we're going to, because here's where I'm going, Roger, and that's this: you have people in some cases who have been living in these conditions for years. If they weren't mentally ill or drug addicted prior to that, there's a good chance that some of the reason they might be now is based on what they've been having to deal with. Now, I want to be really clear. Justin Riggs didn't say this. I'm saying this. He was talking about how animals in this community are expected to have some kind of substantial shelter during the winters in this community. Animals. That we have a higher standard for the treatment of animals than we do for people. And so I listen to some of these folks, and we both see them on Facebook. How is somebody supposed to drag themselves up out of the mud and out of their mental illness and out of their drug addiction like that, with nowhere to go, with nothing to do, with no help, just because we don't like it? How does that
Mike,
happen?
I need to respond. I need to respond because I share your viewpoint that we need to provide the kinds of services. I think you and I may differ on this. I believe these services should be compulsory. I believe these services should be mandatory. You, on the other hand, have said to me, Roger, it's voluntary. Until we get people in this community on board that you cannot live in the bushes, it is unhygienic, it is unhealthy. Look what is going on in Los Angeles. You've got centuries-old diseases that are coming back.
Yes.
Bubonic plague, typhoid fever, all these things, and people saying, well, we can't make you do this. Yes, we can.
Well,
this is a public emergency.
And
I
agree
believe
with
in that,
you.
and I've said that before.
And you have.
And
you've
it
been
is
very
absolutely
clear on it.
mandatory, and that we have to provide these services for people. They cannot be living this way. It is dangerous to the community and certainly to themselves.
And I would say that you and I probably have more agreement on that than you might think. I do believe that there are people who are so ill that they cannot make choices on their own behalf. I agree with that. I've known some of those people. But here's my point, is that if we make, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but if we make making it legal to force people into these various things before we do anything, it'll take decades, because those cases will be fought and fought and fought and fought all the way up to the Supreme Court. And even people and organizations that would normally be supportive will be terrified about the civil liberties implications of it. Part of the reason some of those laws were changed, as I'm sure you know, is that there was a time if you had a troublesome relative that you wanted to get rid of, off into the mental hospital.
There were
and
abuses.
And that's right.
There were abuses.
Right. And so I'm not saying that there aren't some people who may need help even against their will. What I am saying is that can't be the first thing that we try to do. There has to be stuff we do first.
So as you help people, and let's say there's 50 people that need help, and 25 say, okay, I'll come with you, and the other 25 say, no, you can't make me. Those people continue to wield their fist where my nose begins and are destroying our communities. Now, that's what I believe, and that's what I see. Now, I understand your concern about civil liberties, and I understand that I'm a constitutional person. We all remember when Governor Reagan was governor, and this goes back a few years. When I believe it was 66 to 74, he was governor. He closed down the mental health hospitals. He was compelled to do so by Supreme Court decision based on some of these same abuses in the system. Well, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a great need for these mental health hospitals, but they need to be regulated and mainstream into some form of use where people can get some help, Mike. They can get some help. They don't have to live in the bushes like an animal. You mentioned that. Like an animal, doing the kinds of things that are going to hurt them and, of course, hurt the community. I'm very passionate about this. I don't want to see these as throwaway people. They can and should be helped. But if you allow them to make the choice, and they are in fact a prisoner of drug addiction or alcoholism, and they say, no, I don't want to go because then I can't get my drink, then I can't get my needles, then what you've done is we're just turning the water. And I maybe there's a happy median point here, Mike, but I will tell you that if we do not make this some form of compulsory. I can't drive my vehicle 100 miles an hour on the freeway. If I do, I'm going to be pulled over and I'm going to be put in jail.
And yes, and I agree with you.
And I use that same logic when you say you can't live this way and hurt people and certainly hurt yourself. We're going to protect you from yourself.
Well, and this is
I know we're going to go.
We could spend a long time on this.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, and so anyway, let's do this because I want us to really talk about what we can actually do and not just engage.
Well, I'd like to see you. We have a board meeting tomorrow. I'd like to discuss what I've asked our board to put on here, and then what happened as a result of it. I asked them to place on the agenda tomorrow, which did not happen per my request, and every supervisor has an option to place something on the agenda.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why do you seem to have such a difficult time working with these board members?
That's a good question. I'm principled, and I believe in doing what I'm going to do. It's the right thing to do. And I stand tall on it. I don't bend. Now, maybe I'm not very political when it comes to that, but I think we're doing the right thing. And if I think we're doing the right thing, then I'm going to continue to follow that. Just because 4 people, or one case 3, and now another have slipped over, doesn't mean that I shouldn't stand up and do the right thing for the people that I represent. And I need to remind everybody, I've been elected and reelected twice. It's not a fluke. So there are people out there, perhaps more in my district, more than 50%, who believe in what I'm doing and who believe and say, Roger, please continue to do what you're doing. It isn't just me as a shrill lone voice doing this. It is me represented by people in this community who are asking me to represent their interests. Please don't ignore that. And I don't say you do, but when people say you're alone, I may be alone on the Board of Supervisors, but I'm not alone in this community, Mike Thornton. I am very much drawn by people who are calling me and asking me for help because of these problems that people are creating in very bold, open behavior. That can't be negated. That can't say, well, it's just you. Why do you have so much trouble getting along with 4 of your other supervisors? They don't want to change. They think it's more important to go to Japan, Mike Thornton, than it is to address some of these issues here. I think that's frivolous.
Do you really believe that?
Well, they sure spend some money on it, and they believe that it's important, that they think it's more important than dealing with some of these issues which I'm going to talk to you about right now.
So, I want to do that, but I just want to ask you this question, and it may be inappropriate, and if it's inappropriate, please say it's inappropriate. Do you have a different relationship with them in private than what we see in public, or is it the same?
No, it's not an inappropriate question. What you see is what you get. I am a very, very public person. There is nothing I do that isn't scrutinized and looked at, and people say, what are you doing? Oh, you live differently? Do you have a beer with any of these people afterward? No, Mike, I'm pretty much, when on that board of supervisors, it's what you see is what you get.
Well, I'm almost asking the question more about them than I am about you.
Well, I think there's a great, unfortunately, Mike, some of them don't like me very much. That shouldn't be the decision. That shouldn't be whether we have these issues that are addressed here, and I'd like to address them while we have time.
I did that. I guess it just part of the thing is I
curious.
Can't figure out why, when the answer is so obvious, people just can't do it. I don't understand why.
Because it's the human spirit. It's the personality aspect. Nobody can escape that.
All right,
so let me tell you what I asked them to do. First of all, I want to help our city. My district is in the city. I wanted to put on the agenda discussion and possible action to help fund the city of Crescent City to the tune of $18,000 to $25,000 for the next year as a capital expenditure to operate the Fred Endert pool, which is now it's 6. Make it a 7-day pool. That didn't make the agenda, even for discussion. Another item for discussion as part of this whole idea is the action to fund a FEMA-type housing on public property to satisfy the Court of Appeal decision to provide an alternate location for those without shelter who are permitted to rest and sleep right now on public property. That's also my request to have this on this meeting. item for discussion is a list of possible county-owned properties which may be used as temporary housing or staging area to satisfy Court of Appeals requirement, provide alternate location requirement, disallowing open random public land use for both the city and the county. Part of that, the list of available county-owned properties, that's the part they're allowing me to discuss. Remember, when it's on the agenda, it's very narrow. I asked also for our board on this 23rd of July agenda to suspend for 1 year the annual $96,000 payment to the Stimson Fund, which was purchased many years ago to replace property taxes on behalf of the airport project. I asked them to suspend it for 1 year because essentially, Mike, we're paying ourselves back. And that's money that can go for a lot of good things, including the pool project, including any type of funding which may be necessary for an area to discuss about putting a staging area. And that did not make it on the agenda. And I want to reiterate any of the mentions that I just mentioned. The $96,000 would have no impact whatsoever on our approval of our budget. That is money that is paid out on behalf of the airport to ourselves. And I think it's silly, it's frivolous to pay ourselves back in $2057. I want to put that money to use right now where the need is greatest. Now, the chairman, Lori Cowan, doesn't agree with me. So she doesn't put it on there, other than we'll let you talk about what vacant land is available in the county with a very narrow purview. That's not helpful.
Well, what's happening with the money now? Is it being used for other things? Is it being put into a rainy day fund? I mean, what's happening with that amount of money right now?
Well, we have a program called Senator McGuire, I'm blanking on it, the No Place Like Home.
Yes,
okay.
Which is going to serve a very small
It's mental health money only.
Yes.
And it's brick and mortar buildings. Mm-hmm. It doesn't serve any need right now. And all we're doing is talking about it.
Well, I'm talking about the $96,000.
Okay, now the $96,000.
What happens with that money right now?
Right now, it's paid. We make the payment from the county of Del Norte to the county of Del Norte and put it back into the Stimson Fund. Now, we have needs, Mike.
Well, what happens with the Stimson Fund?
The Stimson Fund, which is about $2.3 million now, in 40 years will eventually be $5 million again. Now, I say to you, and I'm using a straight face when I say this, what is $5 million in the year 2057 compared to what can the $96,000 do to help people today, like the staging area we talked about? And I don't have any consensus on that. I can only surmise my colleagues don't think this problem is anything they can do locally.
So I just want to be clear.
Right.
Okay. So there is this thing called the Stimson Fund.
Yeah.
Right now it has
When National Parks bought the property from the Simpsons, this is going decades back,
right.
An agreement was made to, it's called Payment in Lieu of Property Taxes. A $5 million fund was developed and given to the county of Del Norte to be used for economic purposes. Now, they've used that, and I agree with them. I voted for it to help develop the airport project.
Right.
The runway extension and the new terminal, which is beautiful. I'm saying we don't have to pay ourselves back this money. We can suspend it. It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me to pay ourselves back in $2057 that won't be worth anything in 38 years from now.
No, I get that part. So it's just simply a matter of paying this money back in an effort to have in 40 years or so a $5 million fund?
That's exactly right. You're asking it with a question mark. You said it. You hit it right on the back. We're paying ourselves back to replenish the funds that were used as our portion of the down payment on the airport project. Now,
there's no financial consequences. There's
none whatsoever. We're simply using the money, and the Board of Supervisors can change this discussion. And actually, they can make us exempt from paying. We don't have to pay the money back. We could gift it. After all, it is a county-owned airport.
Okay.
So and it's frustrating talking about this because people say, no, it's not responsible. No, it isn't. We can use that money for any way, shape, form. Now, I say taking $96,000 out of a $25 million general fund budget is injurious. We have needs that are right now. You and I agree. We have needs that need to be met right now to address this terrible, growing problem of people without shelter over their heads and some of the consequential behavior.
We're speaking with 1st District County Supervisor Roger Gitlin. My name's Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City. So, Roger, here's sort of talking about the homelessness issue. I mean, I get it. There are a multitude of needs in this community, and I understand that people are juggling different things all the time. But homelessness is a huge problem, and it has impacts across the board. Not just the people who are homeless. It impacts tourism. It impacts business. It impacts all of these things, public health, all of this stuff. And so I know that Jerry Johnson and the veterans have been trying to push this staging area forward for several years. I am no longer involved with True North. I want to make that clear. But I know that True North for the last couple of 3 years has been trying to move forward a similar Hope Village or something like that. Different perspective. One's kind of more military and other one's not, but it's the same premise. We also have Our Daily Bread, who has been doing its best to provide these services as best it can in this community for many years. So we have these, and it just seems to me like people keep going around and around and around and around when we have community members and community support and people who are willing to actually try to do something, but we keep going around and around and around and around in circles. We're going to fund portable showers. We're going to do all of this stuff. Why don't we just get a place for people to go? And so then you can say, you know what? You can't sleep in the park. Why doesn't that happen?
It's a rhetorical question, and I can't answer it except it's frustrating because as we wait to see how this thing plays out, nothing happens. Now, I am hearing all kinds of things. Well, it's like a secret or something. Some board members know that there's something going to go on in this community, and why not make it public?
Why not make it public?
So I would ask that question to the people. I don't know that there is, where there's smoke, there's fire. If there is, in fact, an expansion of any particular property to get people off of Point A, which is the iconic areas of our county, Howe Drive and the Front Street Park, Beachfront Park, and the Battery Point, where there are no shortages of tents that come up and go, and put them into an area which is going to be less impactful. But at the same time, they're then going to have access to other services that we can address. Why can't we agree on that? Why can't I get these items on the agenda for having honest and discussion? Well, Roger, we don't like you. Or some silly nonsense like that. Maybe I'm coming up with an idea that should be explored and vetted.
Well, and let me say this because I want to try to say this the way I really mean it to. Because I think, we talk about Battery Point once again, and we've acknowledged that we've got this whole thing on J Street. We've got this whole thing going on in the swamps, and as you pointed out, other places. And I guess my question would be, because here's the thing that I get people say to me, right? They say to me, the reason Roger cares about this area is because he has property there.
Well, I live down in that area. So, but you said it before, Mike. It's public. J Street, you'd have to go look for problems on J Street to see
unless you live there.
Unless you live there. Now, I have addressed that. I've talked to the liquor store. Please stop selling these little liquor bottles they sell. You can't make a business do something. I've seen this.
You can if they're a public nuisance, though, right?
Well, and again, I'm going to remind everybody, that's the city of Crescent City. That's not my purview. I'm a county supervisor. But
you've never been shy about banging on those city council members?
Well, do you think I've ever... Well, Mike Thornton, do you think I've ever gone to a city council meeting and let them know what I think? Is that a yes?
I think maybe once or twice.
Yes, I'm not shy about it. But you know what? they don't want to be told what to do, or they don't want to have this, or we don't have the resources
Well,
to do that.
that's the thing that I hear from them is that they really don't have the resources, that the county controls the money.
Oh, well, I'm not sure. They have resources that they can take advantage of in deployment of staff. But the reality is, it isn't just because I live there. It's in public view. And let's not kid ourselves. These are high-level tourist locations. Front Street Park, July 4th, the Battery Point Lighthouse. These are areas that are frequented by people with money in their pockets, and they spend it. Now, when I hear, and you say, you people talk to you, I'm not coming back there anymore because of this. That's a red flag. They don't say that about J Street. I'm not coming back there because of J Street.
Because they're not going there in the first place.
Because you really don't see it.
Right.
And we all know the same problems exist in J Street. There was a recent murder back in that area in this cemetery. But generally speaking, out of sight, out of mind. I don't agree with that. But now things seem to be getting worse. The behavior is more bold, Mike. And there are people that are doing this because they can, and they're doing it day after week after month, and it's no longer just resting and sleeping. It's permanent.
Why doesn't the business community step forward and provide more help?
Well,
because from my perspective, they have a vested interest in this.
The Chamber of Commerce, this is a hot button issue. It's highly controversial. It's tempered with the fact that I don't want to offend anybody. Well, it isn't offending someone when you protect businesses. And I will tell you, I would be very surprised to see any downtown business would welcome in a staging center on 3rd Street and on those streets in that area where people are pushing around their shopping carts in and out. They're not going to welcome it. It stigmatizes the community. So my suggestion is to put this staging area in an area which is neutral, where it doesn't have effect. And I have a site that I'm looking at, and I thought it's behind Williams Drive, where the Cal Fire is, in that area where the old McCarthy School, now vacant.
That's right.
You can put your tent, the big open grassy area. Right. Now, who does it affect in there? Yet it's close to services.
Right.
I don't know.
It seems like a reasonable location.
Well, no, why aren't we talking about it? Why can't I bring that up at a board meeting? Why can't we discuss it to see it? Well, what's it going to cost us? Well, let's take some of that $96,000 and set it up where we have, as you say, portable restrooms, a place to take a shower, and an area to pitch your tent, or an area where you can get under cover from the elements. I think that's what we have to do, or do something rather than sitting on our hands.
Well, no, I think it's clear that the cost of doing nothing is exceeding the cost of doing something. I mean, I think that's very clear. We're speaking with Supervisor Roger Gitlin. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process on your community radio station, KFUG. So Roger, we're getting short on time. I would love to have you back to talk about this and other issues. And just to kind of the thing with the business community, I certainly understand why you don't want to have a homeless encampment in the middle of downtown. I get that. What I'm talking about is financial and or other logistical support, because helping to do something about this problem will actually improve the environment, which should ideally improve business for the downtown area merchants. And, going to, a big corporation like Walmart and saying, hey, why don't you give us some money out of your corporate giving fund? I mean, the money it would take to set up a staging area or a Hope Village, whatever we want to call it, is couch change to Walmart.
Okay, may I address that?
Yes, please.
Okay, first of all, many of you know that Walmart has gone through some considerable security changes because their pilferage rate was inexorably high. And they're addressing this shoplifting problem. And the sheriff, to his credit, and the district attorney are on board with doing that. And we have been having regular meetings with them. And as you are well aware, our volunteers went back and cleaned up the county-owned property pertinent to the parking lot. And now it has been cut back thanks to our great staff at the county. Now you can look right in. It is free of debris. Now, we want Walmart to be profitable. If they're losing money at a store because of its It's people coming in and thinking they can get away with crimes. And I will draw the nexus that across the street from the Walmart property is a privately owned parcel where there are all kinds of activities going on that are illegal and against the law. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out that they're walking across the street to Walmart, doing their business, whatever that business is, and going back into this private lot. We need to clean up our community, and we need to cut back these trees.
Well, and I'm drawing a distinction between an individual Walmart store and the Walmart Corporation as a whole. They have a gigantic corporate giving program, and because of a lot of different reasons, they are always looking to try to get some good press. And so is anyone going to corporate Walmart and saying, hey, give us some money to help with this program we're trying to do?
To my knowledge, we have not broached that subject yet, though I have used Walmart in the past for charitable donations in our local projects, and this store has local money to spend. Now, we haven't approached that, but Mike, it's a hell of an idea, and one in which we would not just include Walmart, but all Safeway Corporation, also Home Depot,
Right.
and any of the so-called big box stores as their contribution to fund the economic prosperity of this community. If we sit there, and I know I've repeated myself, if we sit there and talk about it and do nothing, things will worsen, and Walmart may not be happy to be here in this community. So we've got to make them robust, and we have to make them healthy so they look at us and say, this is a community we want to invest in.
And I would argue that Sutter Health Corporation
Sure.
could be part of this solution as well.
Absolutely.
Because they're paying a tremendous amount of cost related to uncompensated care and emergency room visits and all of that. So, Roger, we're out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity for any final thoughts you have. And then also, I know you particularly came on here today to encourage people to attend this Board of Supervisors.
Yes,
meeting.
I'd like the public to come out to tomorrow's meeting, 10 o'clock, 981 H Street, the Flynn Center, and speak of the need of an immediate action to develop a staging center. Let's stop the talk. Let's actually find a place to do this, working with our city partners. It isn't just the city and the county independently. Work to help improve our community. Clearly, we have to do something. If we sit and wait for Sacramento to help us, folks, it ain't going to happen. And the Sacramento and the state legislature, the state assembly, and the Senate and the governor's office, they've got other fish to fry. The conditions that exist, their track record is not very good with spending money and then expecting conditions to improve. Seattle, just to give you an example, Mike, has spent over $1 billion on dealing with the so-called homeless community, and all they can show for it is more homeless. So the money has to be spent wisely and has to be spent with the idea that there are people there that enjoy a certain lifestyle, and we have to protect this quality of life issue. So I'm going to ask you all to come out and speak on behalf of the county immediately, getting addressing this issue of developing an alternate site so we get people off of Howe Drive and iconic areas where it affects our tourism, and get them to an area where they can get some help. And at the same time, a decent housing and not live in our bushes.
And I'm going to add on to that. I think, everything you said, I can get on board with. And I think that we have to stop beating up and demonizing people who are already beat down into the mud, and start recognizing that they are fellow human beings, and that many, if not most of us, all it would take is an illness or a loss of a job or something like that, and most of us could be sitting there right there.
It's a point well taken, and I certainly can understand your thinking that we're all close to it, but in a community like ours, we're a pretty frail community anyway. We're not exactly Carmel, Mike.
We got a lot of people who are living on the edge.
Yeah,
I'm talking about people who are housed.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. And when I look at areas like, and we're in a beautiful area. When I look around and I say, why can't we be more like these communities? Which they have more money. So having said that, I would say your point is well taken, and one which we can all take a lesson from.
First District County Supervisor Roger Gitlin. Thank you for being with us on Public Process today on KFUG. I truly appreciate you coming in. I look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, and I'd love to.
Great.